It's 2 p.m. My name is Lungilele Makakola. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to Market View. This is the second edition this week. Thank you for joining us. We're still focusing on the governor's monetary policy statement, which he delivered last week. Today's focus is the consumer price inflation, which the statement reveals that it averaged 5.0% in the year 2023 and 4.8% in the year 2022. I want to speak to in-house economist Mr. Sanele Sibiya for this discussion. We want to find out what is the effect on this on consumers as well as on the economic growth of Eswatini. He'll later join us for today's financial markets, and then we go to business news. The World Bank gathered with journalists, and they did mention that they have put stringent measures in place to ensure that procurement processes for projects under its auspices are transparent. Stay with us. So let's go for business news at this moment.
Do you reside in any of the Ubombo sugar communities or nearby areas? Here is a notice. A door-to-door TV license exercise will be conducted in your area from the 19th to the 28th of June 2024. The personnel conducting this exercise would be easily recognizable by their attire bearing the Eswatini TV logo and their individual name tags. Your cooperation is valuable to us, and we respectfully request that you participate in this exercise truthfully. Do not be deceived. It is not appropriate for anyone to request money for a television license. Make payment for your TV license by using MTN Mobile Money at 76222000 or by visiting the nearest post office. Eswatini TV, Sibugo Semaswati.
Every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Welcome back, and this is our news. The World Bank has put stringent measures in place to ensure that procurement processes for projects funded under its auspices are transparent. These sentiments were made by the senior procurement specialist for the World Bank, George Daniel, during a meeting of the World and the Eswatini Editors Forum held at the UN House in Mbabane.
During the project preparation, we do what we call a project risk assessment, where we look at the management capacity of the implementing agency. We look at the oversight and controls. We look at the market practices. And out of that, then we categorize the potential risk of that project. And the risk categorization then leads to us to say, for this particular project, what are sort of reviews and internal controls need to be put in place to make sure that the checks and balances are taken care of. And then we, during the procurement process for high-risk projects, of course, we review the bidding documents, we review the evaluation reports, we review any correspondence related to that particular project, and we give no objections or clearances at various stages of the procurement process, just to make sure that there is consistency with the application of our procurement regulations, and also that there is consistency with the bidding documents. Our procurement documents and regulations do require that suppliers accept our anti-corruption guidelines, which provides for dealing with issues of corruptions if they're identified in any of the projects. And also our procurement regulations provide that the bidding documents, the contracts include the bank's right to audit and inspection, so that if there are issues relating to fraud or corruption, the bank has access to the suppliers to be able to audit the procurement-related issues. And sometimes those leads to debarment of the suppliers. And also, one thing to note is that the World Bank has got a cross-debarment arrangement with other multilateral development banks. If one is debarred by the other banks, it's also debarred by the World Bank, or if it's debarred by the World Bank, same applies to the other multilateral development institutions. So in the procurement process, in our exchanges with the projects that are funded by the World Bank, there's a system called STEP, Systematic Tracking of Exchanges in Procurement, which has already been integrated with various databases of suppliers, with information on suppliers and owners. So when the projects are doing the procurement through that STEP system, when you punch in the name of a supplier, the system will run through all the databases to check whether this company has got issues in any other part of the world, not necessarily just local.
Zambia has maintained its efforts to stabilize the economy despite recurrent external shocks. The economy is showing resilience. IMF Mission Chief for Zambia provides an update on the country's IMF-supported program.
Good news. The IMF has approved the second review of Zambia IMF-supported program. Zambia has maintained its effort to stabilize the economy despite recurring external shock, and the economy is showing resilience. Growth is expected to reach 4.3% in 2023 and is projected at 4.7% in 2024, higher than previously projected. Yet, challenges persist. Lower mining production, lower copper prices, and the protracted debt restructuring process have created a complex economic environment, putting pressure on the exchange rate and raising inflation. Zambia's commitment to reform remains, however, resolute. Throughout 2023, tighter monetary policy to reduce inflation and a significant fiscal effort showcased the nation's dedication to navigate these challenges successfully. This was done while preserving spending in education and health. And the authorities continue to take steps to restore debt sustainability. They agree with the official bilateral creditors on the debt treatment and continue to proactively engage with private creditors. Going forward, continued efforts to sustain fiscal discipline, implementation of the debt restructuring, careful calibration of the monetary policy to reduce inflation, and structural reforms will be needed to safeguard macroeconomic stability and foster durable and inclusive growth. But for the moment, let me congratulate Zambia on reaching these important economic milestones.
It's 8 minutes after 2, and that's it for our business news. Do stay with us. When we come back, we return with in-house economist Sanel Esbia.
Do you reside in any of the Ubombo sugar communities or nearby areas? Here is a notice. A door-to-door TV license exercise will be conducted in your area from the 19th to the 28th of June 2024. The personnel conducting this exercise would be easily recognizable by their attire bearing the Eswatini TV logo and their individual name tags. Your cooperation is valuable to us, and we respectfully request that you participate in this exercise truthfully. Do not be deceived. It is not appropriate for anyone to request money for a television license. Make payment for your TV license by using MTN Mobile Money at 7622 000 or by visiting the nearest post office. Eswatini TV, Sibugo Semaswati.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market View. This is the Tuesday edition. Thank you for staying with us. We wanted to connect with Mr. Esbia, our in-house economist. We are still talking about the governor's monetary policy, which he delivered last week, Thursday. Today, we're focusing on the consumer price inflation, which the statement discloses that it averaged 5.0% in the year 2023 and averaged 4.8% in the year 2022. Mr. Esbia, very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We want to talk to the consumer price and its benefits to economic growth. What are the benefits of consumer price inflation to the economy?
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to the viewer. So when we talk of inflation, economists usually refer to inflation as a necessary evil. So it is important for things to improve, for prices to rise, so that, at some point it also remains profitable for businesses to stay in business and ensure that they hire more people. So it's a spiral like that. So, but what then becomes a problem is when inflation runs way beyond what one would assume to be the necessity. So usually when we say it's a necessary evil, it's one of those things that hurt us, but the economy needs that to work. So in our case, what we are seeing, Lulu, is that the central bank ensures, they try by all means to make sure that we follow monetary policy that will ensure that prices do not increase way beyond the level that will eventually start hurting the consumers, but at a level that will ensure that consumer producers stay in production so that people keep their jobs, and while at the same time consumers are able to index for that inflation through your increase in wages and all of those other avenues, so that you're able to live with the inflation. But maybe leave it there for now.
So the policy also does disclose that consumer price inflation averaged 5.0% in 2023, and also compared to 2022, it averaged to 4.8%. What were the causes and what effects did it have on consumers as well as the economic growth of Eswatini?
So if you go back to 2022, we were fresh from the fresh years of COVID and fresh from the unprecedented and never seen social unrest in Eswatini. So coming out from that closed loop type of situation where everyone was quarantined, staying at home. So that's why we saw producer and consumer price indices climbing, not very high at that point in time, because there was weaker demand and weaker output coming in through weaker demand coming in from consumers, and commerce was a bit clamped up at that point in time. And then fast forward into 2023, immediately after COVID, when we were coming out of COVID, then we found Ukraine there, that the war in Ukraine actually took more prominence. So what we thought was going to be a short war became this protracted war that is still ongoing today. I think just a few days ago, we were thinking of its second anniversary. We thought there was going to be a bit of a 4-week, 4-month long thing, but it became what it is today. So what that happened, what then that did to the supply chains, more especially when you talk of food inflation, Ukraine and Russia contributed collectively around 14% of the total wheat output for the globe. And now when those two major contributors to the world basket in terms of wheat were now at 8, in terms of sunflower as well. I mean, if you think back as well, you remember there was a time, the sunflower oil was so viral on social media regarding how you can use it and whatnot. But that was purely because there was a huge impact, a huge supply shock happening right at the epicenter of the production of sunflower oil together with wheat. So that's why in 2023, we then saw that upward surge in inflation. And also, coming out of COVID, supply chains were just trying to restore, and consumers had money, they were out there spending. So it was just a magnitude of all those factors playing together to really give us the inflation figures that we saw. And if you remember, way back in 23, the US economy actually saw inflation levels that were last seen during the Reagan years, if I'm not mistaken. So it was like way last seen in the 1940s. So it was a 4-decade high type of inflation. So that's because we're now trying to restore supply chains after COVID. So which are the impacts that we are still feeling today? Just trying to stabilize the economy to levels of sustainability following the shock in COVID. And then there was also that shock that we saw coming through the Russia-Ukraine geopolitical tensions there. And then intermittently, we keep seeing other shocks, but they haven't been as marked as these two shocks that we are seeing.
Monetary policy discloses very key and important issues, Mr. Sbi. I think another important issue or another focus is the decrease on transport inflation, which it says it decreased from 7.8% in 2022 to 0.6% in 2023. What really caused this? Was it influenced by the international Brent crude oil?
So what we are seeing there, one needs to understand that during COVID, if you remember during COVID, there was a time when crude oil was trading at a negative rate. So what that meant is suppliers were practically paying people to hold on and store their crude oil because there was just no demand. Things were not moving. So that's one of the major factors that we saw there. Everyone was quarantined, sitting at home, not moving, not going anywhere. So at that point, crude oil traded the negative, which means suppliers were paying people those contracts. So the roles changed. Instead of you buying from a supplier, the supplier was literally paying you to store their oil because they had nowhere to store their oil. And also, when you look in terms of the cutting of oil output, it's not something you can do just overnight. It takes time. It's a gradual process. So that it did contribute to the whole situation of transport inflation going down, especially coming through the fuel channel. And what we are seeing today, even when you look at markets, if you look at the price of Brent crude, it's still showing those signs and still trying to just adjust to whether the demand is going to increase to levels opposed to the ones that we saw before COVID. So there's still that adjustment in the market to get back to the levels that we were before COVID. So that's what we are seeing happening in the markets, and we are seeing all markets across the globe trying to move in that direction, trying to stabilize. So yes, even domestically, there was a factor purely because of the quarantine. People were at home, nothing was moving. So the transport really just took a surge at that point in time. And also when you come into the domestic economy, we know that transport is one of those regulated, so they can't just increase without necessarily going for a gazette. And I think for the past 2 years, we've not seen those gazettes. Probably I don't use public transport that much, but I don't think we've seen increases. It's still 10 rands for a short trip, and it's been like that for the longest time. So it was all those factors playing together to give us that situation.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine just earlier, and the food inflation, which caused an average of 12.8%. It was caused by this conflict. Is it still much of an impact even in the year 2024?
Unfortunately, yes, Lulu. When COVID came into play, we forecast as economists, we gave a forecast that this is something that we are most likely going to deal with well into 2025, 2026. So it's not going to be one of those things that just adjusts freely and frequently, just like that. Right now, what we are dealing with is the fact that in as much as we are seeing inflation going down, but prices still remain high. And we call that a situation of sticky prices in economics. Prices never really adjust downwards, but they always adjust upwards. They are sticky to adjust downwards. So right now, what we are facing is, in as much as the rate at which the prices are increasing has somehow decelerated, but the prices still remain high, which is the fact of life that we are living today. So we are still waiting for those indexation moves in terms of your increase in salaries and those other increases in terms of households' incomes to actually just offset and make sure that households are just reversed to the positions that they were before COVID. And we're hoping that when we start seeing interest rates going down this year, probably, then we are also going to see households regaining some of their purchasing power and being able to live with the inflation that we have right now, because the fact of the matter is prices are high. They've never been this high before, but we do not expect them to go down. Prices rarely ever take the reverse direction.
All right, thanks so much, Mr. Sibiya. It's 19 minutes after 2. We shall go for an ad break. Mr. Sibiya will come back to give us an analysis for today's financial markets.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
kunjalo masoda amahle kunathi lesa
sabatandi ukuthi njengalokhu
sifile sive sithi khulumeni.
Do you reside in any of the Ubombo sugar communities or nearby areas? Here is a notice. A door-to-door TV license exercise will be conducted in your area from the 19th to the 28th of June 2024. The personnel conducting this exercise would be easily recognizable by their attire bearing the Eswatini TV logo and their individual name tags. Your cooperation is valuable to us, and we respectfully request that you participate in this exercise truthfully. Do not be deceived. It is not appropriate for anyone to request money for a television license. Make payment for your TV license by using MTN Mobile Money at 76222000 or by visiting the nearest post office. Eswatini TV, Sibugo Semaswati.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Market View. At this moment, we want to take a look at today's financial markets with our in-house economist, Mr. Sibiya. Mr. Sibiya, afternoon once again. Thank you for staying with us. We wanted to see how the markets are performing this afternoon. Ingabe, Emma currencies, Emeganjana, I see gold is doing quite steady this afternoon. Ingabe, take us through the currencies this afternoon. Good city, Meganjani.
Thank you, Lulu, and good afternoon to the viewer once again. So in terms of currencies, what we are seeing, Lulu, is, markets are continuing to rally to the re-election of President Ramaphosa and, the stability that we are seeing coming out of the South African politics post the loss of the majority vote by the ANC. So what we are seeing today is we're seeing that the rand langing against the dollar edging closer to the 18 mark. We are really seeing it going to the 17, and it's maintaining that trajectory. And we're hoping that as it comes Thursday, when the markets get a full sense of what this government of national unity will be, it is expected that it would either touch 18.00 or actually even get into the 17 region, depending on how the government is going to be composed and depending on whether the markets are still going to like the government that they are seeing. So we are still going to see who's going to get the finance ministry and all the other ministries of the economy. So chances are, if those fall and lean more towards the DA, we might see more rally in the the currencies. And as you can see, against the euro, we are already way below at the 19 mark and also just coming close to the 19.00 mark. Same thing against the Japanese yen. We are also increasing. We've gained ground there as well. So, we are seeing this strength across all major currencies, and that is purely due to the election story, most of it. And while as well, these major currencies are also looking out at what's going to happen in terms of the interest rates stories that are going to come out probably today in London. And we were expecting something to be said in the US today regarding how they see the interest rates playing out. In Japan, we've already seen those news coming out last week. And, in Europe, we've seen these news also come out just last week. And then it's also the issue of the election story there that is now putting us in these very favorable terms, for our exporters. If you're exporting, these are very good times for you to, actually for our importers, if you're importing, these are very good times to bring in more of the commodities because the currency really is playing in our favor.
Yeah, so what's happening in commodities? I see gold is still trading at $2.3 even today.
Yes, Lulu. So earlier on in the trading session, gold lost a bit, but when you check the numbers now, we are seeing that slight increase. And purely that is because, markets are now starting to react to the statements that are coming out from the Federal Reserve Bank. We've seen one of the members of the Federal Reserve Bank coming out to say that, they're not seeing any interest rate cuts this year. So that's why gold, you saw it, if you just check it now 15 minutes ago, it has already started this upward trajectory based off of those news. And then same thing with oil. Oil is still just trying to look in terms of what's going to happen in terms of demand. That's why we keep on seeing it losing a bit of ground, purely because the demand issue is still not yet clear. We are still awaiting that information to come out from the Federal Reserve Bank and also come out from in terms of what we are going to see in terms of inflation, a clear direction. But right now, the anecdotal evidence that we are getting coming out from the from the Fed is the fact that they are really still staying the course and they are not seeing much in terms of interest rates cuts coming in this year. But markets are still trying to mull over that, and we are still awaiting to see what the official news are going to be.
Yeah, looking at international markets this afternoon, Mr. Sbi, are there any changes on the U.S. Asian or U.S. European markets?
Yes, thank you, Lulu. So what we are seeing in Europe is, there is in the US, there is this rally in the markets. Markets are actually performing better across the board. They're all in the green. So that's purely because there is this optimism around, the expected retail figures that are going to come in today, the purchasing managers data that's going to come in this week. And also, while the markets are still awaiting to get a clear direction from the Federal Reserve Bank in terms of interest rate cuts. But, most analysts are still pricing in at least one interest rate cut in the US this year. So markets still remain a bit optimistic on that, but we are awaiting that formal communication to come through from the Federal Reserve Bank. And then in Europe, what we are seeing in Europe as well is it's also taking leave from the US and rallying to that, to those news. What we are seeing happening in Europe as well is the fact that, if you look into the broader European story, what we thought was going to actually push markets and drive markets was this China, this electric vehicle tariff that the European market was trying to impose on China EVs. But what we are seeing is the share of Chinese EVs in the European market still remains very high. And we've seen Germany going into China on a business visit, and they're carrying a lot of those business representatives there. So that there is that move to try and really just shape up moves within there. But we are still seeing there in Paris, it's still trading below the 8,000 mark, but still there, it's still on the green, probably because of the strength of the overall European Union rallying around that. And same thing when we look into London, we're seeing London, just benefiting a bit. That's purely due to the fact that, the pound sterling has lost a bit of ground, still awaiting what's going to happen in terms of the Bank of England's monetary policy statement that's going to come out on Thursday. So that loss of ground is actually rallied stock markets because it has made London equities relatively cheaper compared to your European and your US stocks. So that's why we are seeing that rally happening as well in London. And then again, when you go to Japan, what we are seeing there in the Asia Pacific region is there is that rally as well. We are seeing Japan mimicking moves of the optimism of Wall Street has actually played into Japan. And then when you come into mainland China, if you look at the Shanghai Composite, we're also seeing it gain a bit. That's purely because in terms of the efforts that were being made to show up the property sector within China, the evidence coming out of China shows that it seems to be working in big cities. Now, what we wait to see is, will that trickle down into all these other small cities and eventually absorb the whole economy of this property bubble in China, in the mainland? And then we're seeing Hong Kong seeing those shifts, that outflow into mainland China as well, due to that stability that we are seeing there. And then when you come into the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, we've seen markets really endorse the election of President Ramaphosa, gaining some 2,000 points there, which is around 3.2% in terms of market volume. So we're seeing that happening post the June 16 holiday. And what we are seeing there is markets are just endorsing that, and we should expect a further increase, a further rally going into Thursday, when the new cabinet is now appointed. And then in terms of what we are seeing in Eswatini, like we've always said, it's way post earnings season, and for Maswati, they should start getting used to trading in the market, so that we are seeing a lot of activity within our stock exchange.
All right, thanks so much, Ismail Kunusasbiya, for that analysis on today's financial markets. We've come to the end of our program. Thank you for joining us today. Sanbana at exactly 2 p.m. Have a lovely day.